again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. My name is Mars, and today we are going to be talking about the 5 worst design trials in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. And before I dive right into that, hello! It's been about a week since, I last put out a little video. It's been kind of just a slow week in the game, honestly. That's about all there is to it. There are some things that, I could talk about or I could make videos about, but honestly, between having a new job that I just started at last week, and that's going super well, and a lot of other things, I was like, let me just enjoy a week where I don't have to think about this too much. I don't have to force myself to come up with something. So I apologize for the infrequency of posting for the past week. I'm sincerely hoping that improves over the next couple of weeks, but here we go! The 5 worst trials in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and of course, as always, this is just my opinion. You're more than welcome to disagree, and in fact, I would love to see what you think the 5 worst trials are in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. So, for me, coming in at number 5 is Leviathan 3-star Icebird trial. This fight is BS. This fight frickin' sucks. It sucks because if you don't meet elemental resistance requirements on your entire party, you die. That's all there is to it. And I think that's a really crappy sort of gimmick to include in a fight like this. I also don't... I think the protective barrier mechanic that Leviathan does around himself is interesting. The fact that you have to freeze the barrier and then it drops his mitigation and then you can damage him. It's really cool, but the problem with it is that he snorts one of your units away when you break it. So it's like, I don't know, I kind of like the idea that there was like a 2 routes to beat him sort of option. But the problem with Leviathan is that both routes kind of sucked. And in my brain, this fight just always stood out as one of the biggest pain in the butt fights I think I've done in the game. And it could have been because I did it the hard way. I'll fully confess to that, I'll own up to that. I went at it with nothing but Final Fantasy 15 units, so it's basically my fault that I hate it, but yeah, this one just sucks. And it's because you're so reliant on your friend unit. You're reliant on your friend unit to have enough ice and water resist to not get completely crapped on. And with a broken friends list that doesn't allow you to select from your friends or to opt out of a friend and take a sixth unit of your own, it really, really sucks to have a fight that's like this, that's so punishing when your friend doesn't have the right resistances. So for me, those are just some of the factors that kind of stuck out in my mind as biggest pain in the butt factors to make Leviathan number 5 on my list. So that's why I put that one there. Now for number 4. We have the Scorn of Gilgamesh, and I know a lot of people were thinking the Scorn of Gilgamesh would be higher on my list, because, man, I've complained about this fight a lot. This fight has... It has so many issues, but fundamentally it only has one issue. The main issue that I have with this fight is that it just has one too many gimmicks. I think a lot of the gimmicks that you have to deal with in this fight are actually not too bad. I think the concept of having to seal the boss and all of the elements and an increasing number of elements and things like that, it's not too bad. The concept of the boss buffing himself and buffing break resistance and all those things, maybe not too bad on their own. The fact that the boss alternates between sealing and not sealing, so you want to have strict control over what elements you're hitting him with, maybe that's not too bad either. I also like the idea of the fight getting harder and harder as you progress, where he does more and more damage as you go on. And that starts, in later phases, he starts adding extra Genji bows, and that just really hurts your party. But what I will say about this fight is that it is just one too many gimmicks, in my opinion. If, for example, I did not have to re-break the boss after he buffs himself or dispels himself, if I didn't have to deal with those mechanics, it would make handling some of the other ones much easier. Or if, for example, he did not alternate between sealing and anti-sealing, which is where, you have to hit him with an element, and then you have to not hit him with elements. If he didn't have that mechanic where it alternates, I think if he was only sealing or only anti-sealing, that would be much better. That would be way better. But the problem that I have with this fight is that it alternates, and so since there's no way to re-equip your units on the fly, you're basically stuck with what you've chosen. And so if you haven't geared your party in a particular way to handle the sealing and unsealing, it's just a very difficult and cumbersome mechanic to deal with. And I think fundamentally the problem that I have with it is that you have to sit there with the wiki open to even try to understand what's going on in this fight. And in a time where information is kind of a sensitive topic for the game, it just super sucks that information is so heavily required and you just don't get it from the game. So for me, that's why this fight is ranked number 4 as, the 4th worst trial in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, because it's just got one too many things going on. It is a fight that I dread going back into, and it's a fight that honestly rewards you for one-shotting the whole thing. Other fights are much easier to manage if you decide you want to, slog through it. But this fight, no way. Like 100% of the time I recommend to people, don't bother learning this fight. Don't push him past 80%. Just push him as close to 80% as possible and then one-shot the boss and move on with your life, because it's not worth learning this complicated of a fight as difficult as it is. So that's just me. Number 4 is Scorn of Gilgamesh. Now for number 3, this one is a little bit perhaps unexpected for some people. I selected the Great Explosion Festival as the third worst trial in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. And the reason for that is because this fight has gimmicks that basically pull the pin out on the whole thing. It just deflates the entire fight immediately. It's a fight that rewards you for deleting the entire boss in one turn, or all of the bosses, all the enemies. It's a fight where if you just have the damage, you can kind of ignore all the mechanics. There's essentially no boss fight that takes place. And then even if you do take on the boss fight, we have the gimmick of you need to be able to do every kind of damage. And I feel like they kind of balanced it okay, where you basically need fire and ice for the dad bomb and the mom bomb, and that's cool. And they're so susceptible to the opposite elements that you can bring solo damage dealers, which I think is very fun. And they had the 8 little bombs, each of which are so susceptible to their opposite elements that you could have support units deal damage to them, and it was often enough to kill them. I thought all of that sort of stuff was interesting and good, but the problem is that this fight doesn't in any way satisfy or reward you for sticking around. You do have a kill with LB mission requirement on it if you want to go for the full clear. However, that's not really too much of an issue. If you have somebody with, some party LB fill, you can do an Entrust with Bartz or Galoof, who are 3-star base units, and get off that limit burst that you need for that turn 1 LB kill, and you can just kill the entire thing before the fight even starts, and that's often what is recommended. So for me, I felt like this fight could have had more potential, and I feel like if the weapon system was less restrictive, I guess, because in a lot of games you have the option of, having 2 sets of weapons that you have equipped, right? And you can take an action to swap which weapon you have equipped. If we had something like that in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, it would probably be more interesting to take on some of these fights that have elemental requirements. But we don't have anything like that. What you're equipped with is what you have, and if you hit any of those bombs with a mixed element attack, for example, they're just going to absorb the damage, even if you're hitting them with something that they're weak to. So ultimately, not really the most inspiring fight in my opinion. That's why I put the Great Explosion Festival as fight number 3 in the 3 worst trials in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. Now, number 2, I'm sure people have seen this one coming from a mile away, is Ancient Hellbringer Omega. This trial, honestly, kind of pisses me off. This one suffers from similar issues that Gilgamesh Kai does, or the Scorn of Gilgamesh does, in that it has probably just one too many things going on. It is the sort of fight that rewards you for just killing the boss as quickly as possible. And now, of course, you could extrapolate that and say that for every fight. The sooner you kill the boss, the sooner, you're able to get on with things. Like, okay, the sooner you grab victory. That's great. But the thing with this fight in particular is that if you take more than 4 turns, you lose somebody to a snort. And then if you take more turns beyond that, you lose more people to snort. There's death. There's AoE fire. There's an AoE magic attack that's non-elemental that just hurts like crazy. And it, I don't mind any of those things by themselves. I don't mind any of it by themselves, but when you combo the snort with everything else, I feel like snort is one of the most irritating mechanics when you can't silence it or prevent it in any way. I thought Snort was totally fine in the Octopus and the Teacher, or the Octopus Teacher, whatever you want to call that one, with Orthos and Typhon, or Typhoon, whatever the heck they're called. I felt like Snort in that one was great. It was actually kind of cool because, you know, if you hit Typhon with wind damage, it cancels his Snort. He doesn't use it on his following turn. But with Omega, it's irresistible. It's the fight is counting down your doom, basically. So you have to address it. You have to sacrifice somebody to the Snort, and it kind of sucks. I don't really like it. If it was a Snort for 2 turns, then you could have a dummy unit who could soak it up every 3 turns or 4 turns whenever it comes out. But it's permanent, so you basically have a timer on how quick you can kill the boss. And honestly, this game is not really known for having challenging damage checks, so all in all, I felt like it was really annoying. The other thing that is super frustrating with this fight is bringing a friend unit, because none of your friend units are going to have 100% fire resist, at least, you know, the majority of them, and still have a unit that is built to be helpful in this fight. It's extremely frustrating to have a preemptive attack that comes out and that nukes anybody who doesn't have like 95% fire resist or higher. Definitely a big peeve of mine, especially since it's AoE. I could definitely handle it if it was like a draw attack scenario where it's just single target. I've got a draw attacks tank with fire resist. They're just going to eat it before the fight starts. Okay, no problem. But AoE party wipe, if you don't have 100% fire resist, that just bugs me. It's fine to be able to gear my own party, but as soon as I start needing a friend unit who also has to have that, it sucks, because the friend units, or the friend list sucks, and finding a friend or ignoring friends and bringing a 6th member of your party that's your own, that's a feature that I want more than any other in this game. You know, without those options, it really sucks that your first turn, you have to raise and handle recovery rather than just diving into the fight. So that, for me, those reasons are why I would put Omega, the Ancient Hellbringer, as the 2nd worst fight in the game. Now, if you have listened to the sorts of things that I complain about, I bet you can guess 100% which trial I'm going to say is the worst trial in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. From both a design perspective and a satisfaction perspective, it's just the worst, okay? So lock in your guesses mentally. Here it goes. The Fallen Icebird, okay? Glacial. This trial is by far the worst design trial in the entire game. I hate it intensely. Because not only is there a preemptive attack, but there's a lot of damage you cannot resist. You also get impaled, and many people die, and when this fight came out, basically you just reset the game over and over and over again until RNG was kind enough to you to leave enough of a party alive for you to recover. And also to one-shot the boss, which is the other thing that I hate about it. I would love for a trial to have a boss, you know, it's fine that the boss is weak to fire, but the fact that you can just sneeze on it and it dies, it trivializes the whole thing. So as you can see in the clip that's playing, I have 2 units. I have Awakened Rain, who covers my damage dealer, and then I have my damage dealer, who does fire damage. And that's all you need to beat this fight nowadays. Like, it's pathetic. And when it came out, it was frustrating, because you wanted some cover tanks with ice resist, and you wanted draw attacks tanks with ice resist, and you wanted everything to be drawing attention away from your damage dealers. And you're like, I just need my damage dealers to survive, and then I can recover, and it just sucked, because if you wiped or the wrong people died as you loaded into the fight and got hit by the preemptive, you were out 40 energy. GG, bird, you won. You won before I even had a chance to move. And that never feels good. That's incredibly frustrating. That's why in general, I think if you're going to have preemptive attacks in a game like this, it should be single target, or it should be something that isn't going to wipe your party but maybe inconvenience them, or maybe set you back a little bit. Like, I think if you had an AoE Imperil, you know, as a preemptive, like on the Beasts of the Dark, that's a good example. You start out the fight, you have an AoE Dark Imperil on your party, it just sets you back a little bit. It just means you have to plan for it. Not a big deal. But with Glacial, it was literally rolling the dice. It was, did you just waste 40 energy or nah, you know? And back then, it was, the odds were not in your favor. It didn't matter who you took in your party. It was very challenging to get your DPS through the preemptive attack, to be able to take down the boss, and then to try to recover, and then fill an Esper summon, and get all the missions complete. It really sucked. It was a poorly designed trial. And that for me is why the Fallen Icebird, aka Glacial, is the worst trial in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. So that's been my top 5, with number 1, Fallen Bird, number 2, the Ancient Hellbringer, number 3, the Great Explosion Festival, number 4, Scorn of Gilgamesh, and number 5, Leviathan 3-star Esper trial. So, that's it. That's the list. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear your list. What are your top 5 least favorite trials in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Calling out Mayday!